Hello and welcome to the Blessings in the Streets podcast. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts, and in studio with me today, I have three brothers with me that are men of great character, men of great integrity. These brothers are men of God, and they have taken time out of their busy schedules to just pour into us, to share a little bit about their journey and overcoming challenging moments and adversity, just being open and transparent with us with the hopes of, again, being of encouragement, to inspire, to uplift, and just to make a difference in your lives, and just reminding everybody that you're not in the storms alone, that we all go through stuff, we all deal with things, but that doesn't have to define it as being the end of our stories. So without any further delay, let me introduce to you these brothers. First I have in studio Mr. Rodney Lindsay, I have Mr. Roderick Miles, and I have Mr. Dontae Robison. Brothers, thank you so much for being with us today.
Glad to
Thanks
be
for
here,
having me,
man.
Joe.
Absolutely,
Thank you for the
absolutely.
invite.
Absolutely. I've been looking forward to this for a minute, and I'm glad we finally got it laid out and got everybody at the same point in time. So uh, before we jump in, I do want to give each of you an opportunity to just kind of give a little general introduction about yourselves. You know, what you do, where you're from, and anything else that you'd like to share. So I'm gonna jump to you, Rodney, first, and let you get going. Tell the audience a little bit about who Rodney is.
So my name is Rodney Lindsay. I am from Indianapolis, not originally, but I'll get into that in a second. I am the owner slash managing partner slash co-owner of Rindy Enterprises LLC. Currently, we're running a party bus business in Indianapolis, as well as a delivery logistics business as well. Um, my story has a lot of, like I spoke to Joe today, my story has a lot of ins and outs that have come to light recently. So I'm very excited to be on it this time. If you'd asked me to do this 2 months ago, I wouldn't have been in the same place I am right now. So it's a good time for this. Yeah, just moving forward with that. When I said I was originally from Indianapolis, that's not quite all the way truthful. I was born in Fort Dix, New Jersey, on an army base. My father was in Vietnam when I was born, so but I call Indy home. I've been there since I was three. So, yeah, that's me.
All right, all right. And as I share with you, brothers, me and Rodney go way, way back. Like I said, nearly coming up nearly on 30 years. So it's just amazing how much time has gone by, and this is
Mm.
truly one of the best friends I've ever had in life. So no, it was easy bringing him on the show. So I'm glad that he's a part of our conversation tonight. I'm gonna jump to you, Dante. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Dontae Robison, Dallas, Texas, born and raised. I am in media, work in media, but my passion is for just creating spaces for men to just ask themselves some difficult questions and build community. And so a lot of the things that I do are surrounded with that, whether it's serving the men at my church or on my podcast, the Soundboard Podcast. The whole goal is for helping men be better. So that's my spiel.
All right, Dante, appreciate you sharing that. And again, another brother who is coming up on about a year since I've had a chance, the
Hmm.
pleasure of meeting you, met you at a men's event, Candid
Hmm.
Conversations, and
Yep.
you were one of the first brothers that I met coming through the door, and your energy and your welcoming spirit, man, it just made us. You made me immediately comfortable being in that room, a room that as men we're oftentimes not comfortable in those spaces,
Yep.
and you just had a natural gift of making that happen for me. So I appreciate that, and I remember that, and so of course I'm glad to have you on board this evening. And last but not least, Roderick, my brother, tell everybody
Yes,
a little bit
sir.
about yourself.
Well, good evening, everybody. Uh, a little bit about me. I'm a native of Fort Worth, Texas, born and raised in what we affectionately call Funky Town, USA. Um, Married to my lovely wife for 24 years. I have two amazing daughters. Uh, what I do professionally is I work in local government. I'm an executive administrator for one of our local county commissioners, and I oversee all of our office's programs and outreach initiatives. Something about me, I'm a servant. I'm a servant at heart. And to piggyback on my brother Dante, my life's mission has been the trajectory, if you will, has been about mentoring men, mentoring young men, helping them to navigate the waters of moving from adolescence, teenage years, young adult years to fully develop men. I've had the pleasure of being able to invest in so many men's lives over the years. It is fuel for me. It gives me the energy to continue to do the work that I do, and I've been serving in the community all my life. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, that's who I am. If I were to boil all of that down, like I said, you would just say that that's a servant. I have a servant's heart, and I love serving people. And I want to thank you, Joseph, for having me tonight. I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely, absolutely, and the link with Roderick, of course. Even before Candid Conversations, I actually had a chance to listen to him do one of the pre-interviews with Dr. G. You know, advertising the Candid Conversations event. Caught it by accident. I just happened to be surfing on LinkedIn and saw the video. It caught my attention. I listened to this brother's story, and I was moved by what he had to say. And I was just like, man, this is not his story. And then I'm hearing about this men's event, and I'm like, and I was commenting in the section and not knowing at that time, I was thinking maybe I should go. I'm thinking about it. Maybe. Like 30 minutes later, I get a DM from Dr. G saying, I'm gifting you with the ticket to come to Candid Conversations. Oh, okay. I guess that's God saying you need to be up in the building.
Divine intervention.
So, divine intervention. So,
That's
of
that
course,
Dr. G intervention.
yeah, right. So, of course, having the opportunity to meet this brother in person at the event, and he had every bit of the energy that he had in that interview, very authentic and just an immediate connection. And he and I have had some private chats of some things that he's spoken and didn't realize he was speaking. You know, even though he wasn't saying it directly to me, it felt like he was saying it directly to me, even in the midst of that
Wow.
session. And that's just God using you, man. And
Wow.
I've
Thank you.
shared some of that with him, and I appreciate that connection as well. So brothers, I would like, of course, to delve a little bit deeper into your backgrounds. You've all, gave us a little taste of where you're from and what you do. But as with any journey, I don't think you can really get the true essence of the journey unless you kind of go back to the beginnings. And so I'm going to jump back to you, Rodney, and ask you, as you reflect back on what it was like growing up in Indianapolis. I know you got there at the age of 3. You've been there all your life ever since. Kind of tell us, what was it like for you? What was your experience like growing up in Indianapolis? What do you, in terms of fond memories that you have, and if there were any challenges that you had to deal with in growing up, please share that as well.
Well, yeah, Indianapolis is a good little city. It's probably the biggest little city in the world, actually. As you know, living here, not a lot to do, but there's on the flip side, there wasn't a whole lot of crime either. So it was good growing up here. I'm one of a few select people that I've ever known that had the yin and the yang growing up. My mother and father were divorced when I was 17. A lot of chaos up to that point. But on the flip side, since I was an athlete and I participate in a lot of events, one of my very good friends' family I spent a lot of time with had what some would consider a perfect marriage. So I got to see how a man should treat, how a man should lead, how a man should, perform, provide, protect, the major P's, as well as not so much on the other side of it. So seeing both sides of the coin, it made me aware of this is what you need to do, this is what you should not do, and kind of seeing both sides of it. So I didn't get the negative only, I didn't get the positive only. I kind of had the middle ground. So I feel like I'm blessed. At the time, I didn't feel that way, but I feel like I'm blessed. Um, and I can tell you that the chaos that I lived in my home caused some trauma, but we'll get into that a little bit deeper later on. But yeah, I mean, I felt like growing up in Indianapolis was good. I mean, I was an athlete my entire life, playing, 3 sports a year or whatever the case, as well as had a little bit of an artistic flair too. So there's a little bit of all that mixed in there, and my mother and father provided, along with the chaos, but they provided. They did the best they could. So yeah, I've had both sides of the coin, so I can speak on both sides of it.
Awesome, and thank you for sharing that. And again, I think that's why we talk about these beginnings, because it's what makes us who we are, what we go through, and again, me having knowing Rodney personally, and having an opportunity to just to see how he interacts in his day to day walk of life. And when you talk about a hard working brother, this is a brother who he will try anything. He will work a room. He will do whatever he's got to do to make it and make his marks. You can't associate nothing about lazy with this brother. He is going to do his thing, and I've always admired that about him. He's just a hard working brother with a good heart, and so that's a special thing, and I'm sure the pleasant times and some of the not so pleasant times are all the things that kind of formulate who you are and the man that you've become, and the things that you're doing in your works in lives today. So thank you for sharing that. Jumping to you, Dante. Tell us, what was it like growing up in the D here? Fond memories that you have, and if there's any challenges that you had to deal with in growing up, please share that as well.
Yeah, so I'm specifically from Oak Cliff, Texas. If y'all don't know much about if you're from Texas, you probably have heard Oak Cliff. We got a whole song about that's my hood, and I am a proud to be from Oak Cliff, Texas. And one of the things, sadly, I've lived a life like a lot of black men. I grew up in a single parent home. My dad wasn't around. It was my mom and my younger sister. We're about 5 years apart, and just always had a big family around me. So although I didn't grow up with a father in my home, I've always had uncles and stuff there. But as we know, and as I've started to grow older, I've started to realize that there were so many components of manhood that I missed, and so I was it finding myself trying to create this idea of what men did. Now I'm at an age where I've been having to try to break some of that down, but I had just created this idea of what a man should do and who a man is, whether that's from hearing about it in music or seeing it on TV or just seeing just men just from just looking and how they just kind of carried themselves and moved and so yeah, man, that was my life, man. Just kind of trying to get through it and figure it out, and thankfully, I had a mother who was such a provider, bro. My mom, she was one of those women. She didn't make no excuses. She provided, but also my mom was one of those women. She ain't one for talking about emotions or feelings because she didn't grow up in that kind of home. And so, as I grew up, I started to realize that like I just had this very just like when it came to emotion stuff, I'm like, I don't care about that. Ain't nobody got time for that, which hasn't necessarily
Yeah,
helped me in my relationships now being a father and a husband. And so yeah, man, that's the upbringing. Just single parent home, out here trying to figure this whole manhood thing out. Kind of solo dolo. I didn't necessarily play sports or anything like that growing up. My mom wasn't. She wasn't watching sports or nothing like that, so she wasn't like, "Oh, let's get Dante in sports," and he could have mentorship there. So your boy just out here was just trying to figure it out, King. But I done made it this far, so I guess it ain't too bad.
All right. Hey, there you go. There you go. Good stuff, man. I appreciate you sharing a little bit about your journey and growing up. I also grew up in a single parent household, so I understand what that's like, and just the challenge of mom trying to play that dual role, being the mother and the
Hmm.
dad, and that's a hard task to put on any woman to do, but you
Right.
also, admire and respect the fact that when you have that hard working mother who just gives it all, leaves it all on the table to raise her children and do the best in providing for them. You appreciate that the older that you get, and realize how
Hmm.
significantly valuable that was, in spite of maybe not having dad around, and or maybe not
Right.
having the male mentors that you would have liked to have had to kind of show you some of that stuff. So
Yeah.
thank you again for sharing that. So we done went from Naptown to Oak Cliff, and now we going to Funky Town.
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Roderick, please tell us, what was it like for you growing up? Fond
Man,
memories, any challenges that you had to deal with coming up, man?
man,
Share that with us.
Joseph, Joseph, I'm just gonna say this. It's hard to follow Rodney and Dante, man. I'm just like humbled. Like, man, these brothers are dope. That's how they gonna do it. This what we doing. We gonna start out like this. I'm sitting up here thinking, man, what kind of story I'm gonna tell? Golly. Nah, man. It's interesting that Rodney and I share something unique because my parents divorced when I was 17. Well, no, I take
Wow.
that back. They divorced when I was 16. It was my sophomore year in high school. But up until that point, man, I feel like I had a pretty good childhood. It was kind of dope, to be totally honest. Both of my parents were professional working people. My mother was a nurse, and my father was at that time in real estate. Um, so my dad really showed me the value of hard work because I remember as a kid, like 12 and 13, we would load up the lawnmower and a gas tank, and he would drop us off in the hood to cut the yards of his rental properties. He would drop me and my younger brother off in the hood, and we had to cut the rental property, the grass, and he would pay us like $25 to cut these yards. And listen, these yards weren't like your yards at your house. These were houses that had been vacant for months, and the grass had grown up to like your knees. And bro, all we had was a lawnmower, two rakes, and a gas can. My dad was cold with it. He didn't even leave us no water or nothing. He would drop us off. We would just be out there. But my dad taught us the value of hard work, right? So we would do that, and then when his business expanded, uh, we would do janitorial service. We would clean up the office buildings and stuff like that. So I grew up with parents that taught me the value of hard work. Um, and my parents were great people, but they had their own struggles, right? And growing up in the house, you could feel the tension, or you could feel that something was off. That's one thing that I've learned working with young people. You can tell when your mom and your daddy ain't on the same page, or when there's something different, when there's a different vibe in the house, or when they're mad at each other. And they just learned how to function that way, and they became really good roommates.
Hmm.
Yeah, they became really good roommates, and we grew up seeing that, and it left the image that that's what marriage was supposed to be. They roommates.
Hmm.
It wasn't a whole lot of affection or anything like that. They both went to work. They took care of their responsibilities and all of that stuff, and they were great providers. But it was really like a roommate situation. And when I look back on it and think about it, my dad was so busy grinding. He was an entrepreneur. So he didn't have like a traditional 9 to 5 job with benefits. He had to kill what he ate. And if he didn't kill nothing, then we didn't eat. So he was always at work, always at work. And I'll never forget the way my dad and I would connect. We connected around television, right? So back in the day, I'm going to age myself. We would watch Star Trek at night. And then after Star Trek, Perry Mason would come on. And after Perry Mason, it was the $6 million man. And then after $6 million man, the TV went off.
Mm.
But that's the way that we connected, because he would be at work all day, and when he would come home, he would eat his dinner, and he and I and my siblings, we would connect around the television. And it's funny because my family, I find myself doing that with my family, and that's a cycle. Like Dante said, I had to break. It was uh, a negative image, a negative thing that I learned, and I have to break that because watching TV, you're not connecting with your family. You watching TV.
Hmm.
Uh, so growing up was cool. I was fortunate enough to have friends in the neighborhood, and when I was growing up, we spent all our time outside. Right, it wasn't in the house playing video games and stuff like that. We were outside, and so I had really good friends in the neighborhood. And one of my friends, his name was Peanut. His dad was like the dad for everybody on the street, and his name was Mr. Anderson, but we affectionately called him Mr. A. And so I spent every day in the afternoons and stuff after school at Mr. A's house with Peanut. On the weekends, we were at Peanut's house with Mr. A, and Mr. A really taught me how to be a man. He taught me what it was to listen to listen to your kids, to correct your kids, and just kind of taught me those lifestyle skills that you need to know as a man. And it was a really safe space to be with him because we could talk to him about whatever, and he would keep it 100. But he would always listen to us, and he would relate to us, and help us to see things from a different perspective. Um, when we would talk about my parents and their relationship and stuff, and when we would talk about how my daddy was this and he was that and he was unfair and my mama was unreasonable and all of that kind of stuff, he would listen to us, but he would also show us life from their perspective. And so it was
Mm-hmm.
really helpful, man. And I credit Mr. Anderson with really helping me to learn how to be a good man, to be a good human, not just a good man, but just a good human. Um, I'm grateful to him, man. The advice that he gave me helped shape who I am today. Um, and so when my parents got a divorce, that was a really, really hard time. And if it wasn't for Mr. Anderson and other people like him, I don't know where I would be.
Mm-hmm.
My parents got a divorce. I was in high school.
Yeah,
I'm,
look, there we go. Look like your sound went out on this on Roderick.
and I had
Oh, there we go.
you got me back. I'm
We
sorry
got
about
you
that.
back. No problem.
Okay, like I was saying, when my parents got a divorce, man, I'll never forget it. And it messed me up. My dad standing in the house. He was coming to pick up the rest of his stuff, and he was trying to tell me and my sister was at college at the time. He was trying to tell me and my brother, man. He said, "Boys, I'm sorry that I let y'all down." And he broke down and started crying, and I'll never forget running out the house with tears in my eyes, running down the street like I was trying to run away from the pain, and came back to the house and cried that whole night, man, because I felt like my world had come to an end. I was like, my parents ain't here.
Mm-hmm.
Although their relationship really wasn't much, the fact that he was no longer going to be in the house and he wasn't going to be present was devastating to me. And
Right.
so I did like most people do when they're hurting, they turn to things to mask or dull the pain. So I started drinking in high school, and I started hanging out. And my mother had a job to where it would cause her to travel, and it would just be me and my brother at the house some weekends and some weeknights. So we started in some ways raising ourselves, man. And I exposed my brother to the streets. We would be in the streets buying beer, 40 ounces back in the day, riding around the hood, seeing what we could get into. I mean, we did so much foolish stuff, bro. We would we would pick up women on the street and just be hollering at them, see if we could get them to come to the house and we could do something. I mean, we did on occasion.
Ah. Mm.
Man, it was wild in my house, bro. It was wild, man. And me and my partners, man, we would drink, and I kind of exposed my little brother to alcohol and all of that kind of stuff. And that was our way of dealing with the loss of my dad's presence in the
Mm-hmm.
home. And it caught up to me. And it caught up to me when I graduated from high school. I graduated and I started out at Grambling. And I'm sorry if I'm going too long, but I think
You
it's
good?
important. So I went to Grambling, man, and when I got to Grambling, that's where God began to deal with me. God began to deal with me, and I gave my life to Christ when I was at Grambling. And then I left Grambling and I went to another HBCU called Philander Smith College in Little Rock, Arkansas. And man, I felt so bad because I left my brother there by himself, and I gave him the wrong handbook. I taught him the wrong things, and I left him there by himself to deal with that by himself. And I carried a lot of regret behind that because my brother got involved in gangs. Uh, my brother got involved in selling dope, and then he started using dope, and he got addicted to it, and his life just kind of spiraled out of control. And for the longest time, I carried the guilt of that because I was like, I exposed him to that stuff, and then I left him all by himself.
Mm-hmm.
So it
Mm,
was hard, man. But I'm thankful that my brother now is a Christian. He's doing really great. He's uh, he's a quadriplegic now. He doesn't have the use of his lower extremities or his arms. He has limited mobility with his arms. But I'll tell you this, man. My brother, he became a quadriplegic because he was at a Denny's restaurant and ran out the restaurant without paying, got in his car and was driving and the brakes went out and his car flipped over the embankment and it severed his spine.
mm,
Oh my God.
And my brother will tell you today, God knew exactly what he was doing by taking my legs. Because if I still had my legs, I would still be running the streets.
wow.
Now I'm running for him.
Mm,
So
That's
that was
good.
there was a lot of hard times and tragedy and trauma growing up, but God made it good, man. God made it good.
Mm-hmm.
God turned it out for good. So I hope that helps somebody. That whatever you're going through, man, it may look bad and it may be hard. It may be a hard place that you're in now, but just keep moving forward. God's gonna make it good. So thank you for letting me share, bro.
absolutely, absolutely, and first and foremost, thank you for your transparency and sharing that. Whenever I ask this question on shows, I mean, and this is obviously this is in the very beginning, top of the hour, and you never know what you're going to hear, and but I think it's important that not only in you sharing the story, but just the fact that we're in conversation with men tonight, and just you being able to do that and open up and just and pour out the way that you did, but also just acknowledging the fact that God is real and he knows how to take what was a troubling time for us, and flip that thing and leverage it in a way for our good, as you said. So that way we can, be still and be focused on him and allow him to pour into us and open up in us, the gifts and our purpose in life. And part of that process is going through that journey, going through those bumps in the road. It doesn't always feel good in the moment. It doesn't always, it's not always convenient, but it's necessary. It's a part of
Yeah,
the big
Mm-hmm.
picture.
yeah,
And so
yeah.
I do truly appreciate you sharing that. And we all needed to hear that, as well as those who are
Mm-hmm.
tuning in, to take heed to that. So thank you so much for sharing that. So as we move along in our life journeys, your brother's been around for a while. You understand that, there are highs in life and there are lows in life. But, even if you're really good at navigating that stuff, there comes a point when you're going to every now and then be face to face with a moment of adversity, a moment of life challenges that hits different. That the weight of it all is a little bit heavier than what you're accustomed to lifting, and you may in fact get to the point where you're actually doubting, questioning, how am I going to get through this? This is something that I don't even know if I'm gonna be able to make it through. The mere fact that you brothers are here today lets me know that you did. But in that moment in time when you were going through whatever it was that you were going through, it was a whole different perspective for you. So I'm gonna jump back to you, Rodney, and ask you, tell us about a time when you were in such a situation. Kind of share with us what that journey was like, and what did it take for you to have your breakthrough moment to be able to persevere through it.
So I'm gonna take a quick step back from this and preface this conversation by saying the young lady that I'm with now and I met when I was 18. She was 15. Never accomplished anything at that particular time, but a little flirting, no big deal. The Lord brought her back into my life 35 years later, and thank God He did, because when we first had a conversation, when we first met each other, there's no way that I was ready to take on the responsibility of the person she is, that she's become, or she was even at that point. I wasn't there yet. Um, Through some introspection, now you talk about, was there ever a time that you felt like you couldn't get through something? Because of unaddressed childhood trauma, and I don't know if you're familiar with the children of alcoholism trauma syndrome. So that has played a major role in my life. Intimate relationships have always been difficult for me. Um, Letting complete trust, even though I tell people I'll give you complete trust until you destroy it, but letting that complete trust go and giving that to a person and saying, I'm willing to be completely, laid bare to you, and whatever happens, happens. what in growing up, and just to give you two gentlemen a little preface, also Joe and I met because we did work together, but that my relationship then, what as he and I were, just starting to meet each other, my relationship then was very rocky, and she had kicked me out again for like the ninth time or whatever it was, and Joe offered me refuge in his apartment. He said, "I don't have much, but you're more than welcome to it." So that's how Joe and I got to be so close because I pretty much was, out looking, and he gave me a hand and said, "I got you as long as you need me. Don't worry about it. I got you." So I'm blessed that Joe was there for me at that particular time. But what I've learned, the trauma. Now I'm a huge advocate of, going to see therapists. I've been going to therapists since my parents divorced when I was 17. Very huge advocate of it, and therapists always gave me something to work on, to realize, to fix. But it wasn't until recently, and I'm quite honestly within the last 6 months, that this whole children of alcoholism trauma was actually brought to light in my mind. And I thought that's what I've been missing. I've always felt like all the other therapy sessions have been good, but it's always that little piece that I wasn't quite hitting up on. Why can't I be more, in an intimate relationship? Why can't I give more? Why can't I completely sell out to this person? Always had that difficulty in my life. So the young lady I'm with now, she is very much the loving, everything is all about love and loving. And in my house, kind of like Roderick alluded to, and I think even Dante, we never said the word love in our house growing up. That was not a
Mm-hmm.
word we exchanged. That was not a phrase, to tell somebody you love them. Oh, no, we don't do that. And especially my father was very, that's not how a man acts. You don't cry. You don't
Mm-hmm.
have feelings. You go perform, and like you mentioned, you go kill what the family needs to eat, and that's where you're going to act. Um, and I related also to your Mr. A was my Mr. Roberts, not Joe, but another
Mm,
Mr. Roberts, who showed me the way that no, you don't have to be like that. It's okay to show feeling and emotion.
yeah.
But I was so jaded by the chaos that I grew up in, to the point where it became difficult to give myself 100% to somebody, to open up and say, I'm vulnerable. Here's what I need. And so I spent a lot of time spinning wheels, obviously dealing with the wrong people. But when I met back up with my current girlfriend, I said, I'm willing to be 100% transparent. I'm willing to be open, lay bare, but I didn't know how. I mean, quite frankly, I had no basis of knowledge on how to do that. It came a point where we were very much on the verge of, this is what I need, so it's maybe we shouldn't be together, maybe we should split up. Very hard, very hard conversations, very hard realizations, and it took me a long time to understand where that trauma's coming from. I mean, that's childhood trauma that I've been carrying around for 50 plus years,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
not being able to identify and put your finger on it. I just always assume I'm just a hard person to be with. As a matter of fact, I told her in the beginning, hey, I'm a very hard person to be in a relationship with because we don't address trauma. And I didn't have that piece to say, this is why. It makes sense now. This is why I am who I am. This is why I act like I act. So when I mentioned before, 2 months ago, I wouldn't have been able to talk about this topic. And I'm sure Joe will never tell this, but I actually reached out to him and said, "Yeah, I'd love to go on your podcast, but I don't have a story that is worthy of your podcast."
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Oh, you do.
How wrong
And
you
then,
are.
and then,
Yeah.
yeah, and then,
Right.
and
Yeah.
but going through this introspection, and getting with a person
Mm-hmm.
that truly loves me and supports me, and it just, everything in life just hits so much differently when you know that this person has your 100% back, that this person is 100% supporting you. They may not agree with the idea, but they know I'm here to support you, and if you fall, I'll be there to catch you. That life just hits a lot different. And the unfortunate part is I didn't have that 35 years ago, but I have it now. So I grab hold of it and I
Yeah.
say, what do I need to do to make a change? And I can tell you, there have
Yeah.
been some things that I've changed about myself. I was one who would carry a grudge and would hold on to it and just absolutely, and I hate to use the word, but just hate. I would just hate if you in any way, shape, or form did something that I felt like you were trying to hurt me or you were trying to attack me. You were on my list, and I didn't care if you lived,
Mhm.
died, or whatever. You were on my list, and that was it. And she softened my heart. She's like, you can't carry hate. You because you need to forgive, not for them, but for yourself, because you're carrying
Yeah.
around this hate in your heart that doesn't need to be there. So I've given myself the opportunity to let go of a lot of past trauma. I'm working through it. Like Roderick said, at a young age, trying to numb the pain, I started drinking as well. And as a matter of fact, the lady that what Joe knows that I was dating at that time, she gave me an ultimatum at 27 because I was, as Joe said, I was a hard worker, but I just worked a lot. I had a full-time job and DJing at night 6 nights a week. So I
Wow.
would literally, be gone all the time, drinking 6 nights a week. And she just pulled my card one day and said, "Look, I got two kids. If you want to be in their lives and our lives, you got to stop drinking." So yeah, I stopped. Because I wanted to be in their lives at that particular time. But the largest thing is I've seen alcoholism just destroy people, and I didn't want anything to do with it.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
wanted nothing to do with it. Addiction in general, I've watched destroy family members, and I wanted nothing to do with it. So I don't want to keep droning on and on and on. But my challenge was just about losing the relationship that truly feel like the Lord moved me to, because there was no reason in any way, shape, or form that after not speaking to this person for 35 years, that she came across my people you might know on Facebook. I went through a little bit of a challenge where I had a motorcycle accident and I was bedridden for 3 or 4 months. So, I'm gonna be quite frank with you. I got to zero. I got to the point where I didn't know where my next meal was coming from at times. I didn't
Wow.
know what I was going to do. You talk about a dark place. I was in a very, very dark place. I mean, even to the point of saying, what is my purpose for being here? Why am I even here? And
Yeah.
Mhm.
in meeting her, she helped me get through that. So yeah, I mean, when I spoke to Joe originally, mental health was going to be my topic that I've really honed on lately, and especially men of color. Mental health is a huge issue. We've got to grab hold of the fact of these traumas that we're trying to work through. These traumas that we've been always told to put them on the back burner, that they don't really
Yeah.
matter. These
Yeah.
traumas that we've been told that that's just life and you got to deal with it. That's not the case. So, and again, I'm sorry if I'm droning on and on and on,
No, you
but
good, man.
huge
You're
mental health
good.
is huge right now in my book. I'm doing my very best to become. Now, I'll never be 100%. I understand that fact. But as I used to jokingly say, and now it's serious, I used to tell people all the time, don't judge me. I'm still on my Christian journey. But now I say it with truth behind it. Don't judge me. I'm still on my
Mhm.
Christian journey. So, um, yeah, that's kind of where I am. I'm growing. I'm learning. I'm willing to share whatever trauma, whatever hardship, whatever I can to help. Hopefully, it helps somebody else that doesn't wait till they're almost 56 years old before they figure out what the problem truly is. Um, yeah, and you get with that person that lifts you up and completes you and forms that ring that God intended for you. You don't have to wait to that point. And I know for a fact, and I firmly believe this, that God was waiting for me to get myself correct or get to a spot where He could get me correct before He brought her back into my life. I spent a lot of
Mhm.
years being a knucklehead. I mean, a lot of years, but I firmly believed at 18 years old that I wasn't gonna live past 30. So I lived hard. I lived really, really hard. Um, so yeah, that's where I'm coming from right now. I'm just trying to get through this trauma. I'm addressing what affects me. I'm addressing, become a better person, to become more free, because that's truthfully what it is. I was living in a in a prison of my own brain for 50 plus
Hmm.
years. I was carrying around trauma that I had nothing to do with. Whatever happened between my parents is what happened between my parents. Nothing to do with
Right.
me.
Hmm.
Right.
Whatever
Right.
my dad did is what my dad did. Nothing to do with me. Whatever my mom, she did her very best to try to raise me. There was some deficiencies at times, and I'm sure she would agree. Had nothing to do with me. So I'm starting to realize now, and I even said to my stepson, when he gets all excited about something, I'm like, what can you control in this whole situation? You only got three things you control: yourself, your actions and your reactions in yourself. That's it. Past
That's it.
that, you can't carry somebody else's burden. And I
That's right.
carried for
Hmm.
years, I carried people's burdens. For years I carried hate in my heart. And all it did was just make me old and gray hair. So I
That's
passed the
good.
baton back to DJ Joe Roberts, and I'm gonna let you take it away. Now I'm sitting back and listening,
Mm-mm-mm.
and I hope that somehow, somewhere, and if it only affects one person, I've done my job. But if somebody's out there and stuck in a situation where they feel like there's something missing, try to address everything. Try to figure out what it is. Try to figure out what you can do differently, and it will come to you. The answer will come to you. But I honestly believe that God waits for you to be ready for the answer before He presents you with the answer. So
Oh, for sure.
I was so many years I spent not ready for the answer, and the unfortunate part is I don't have a relationship with my father very much. We are distant. I mean, that's a very kind way of saying it. Um, but I need to mend that fence, not for him, not for him at all, but for me.
Yeah.
Hmm.
There's a piece of me that can't go any further. They always say you can't get your blessings if you're worried about what happened prior. You can't accept in your blessing with a cold heart. So that's where I stand right now.
That's
It's
good,
And
awesome,
I'm
bro.
hoping I
man.
bring some value to this conversation because you guys are just blowing me away. I'm just so in
Well,
awe of you guys.
thank you, man. Thank you so much for sharing that, the transparency, and you and I have had many
Hmm.
in-depth conversations. I've spent considerable amount of time with you, and you just taught me some more about you, some more layers that I didn't even know. And but we need to hear these type of things, and I'm glad that you have allowed yourself to let that guard down, to empty out, instead of harnessing all of that inside of you and taking blame and holding in anger and frustration and hate, and understanding that forgiveness is necessary. It's for yourself,
Hmm.
not others. And sometimes the hardest person to forgive is you.
Yep.
um, and so it's refreshing to just see and hear, that you have a newfound appreciation and love for yourself. A word that you said you didn't grow up hearing, but your actions and your story is saying that you're embracing that, and you're starting off with embracing it
Hmm.
for you. Seeing your worth, seeing your value, and just a reminder that, hey, you're never too old to learn. You're never too old to right the
Hmm.
ship.
Yeah.
Everything that you spoke to is a testament to that. So I thoroughly appreciate you sharing your story, and I'm certain. I mean, I'm getting blessed just listening to you. So I know some people listening are going to have that same opportunity. So thank you for that.
Hmm.
Dante, jumping into you. Tell us about one of those times, man. You were hit with something that was a little heavier than normal. You were questioning, I don't know about this one. Tell us what that journey was like for you, and what did it take ultimately for you to have your breakthrough with that.
Yeah, man. So I think, for like that of a lot of people, 2020 was just a very tumultuous year for me. And honestly, I'm not even just going to say 2020. I'm going to say probably about 2020 to like 2021. Like those 2 years ended up being some very shaping years for my life as a man, simply because in 2020, I got furloughed from my job. So, like a lot of people, I lost my job. I was working in radio at the time, and I was working in advertising. Ain't nobody going nowhere. We got clubs shut down. We got the only place you can go is to the supermarket and back to your house. And so, and that during 2020, I lost my job, and it was funny because I remember telling my now she was my girlfriend then, my now wife, like, "Woo, thank God we got jobs that are solidified." And I promise y'all, within literally like a day, maybe 24 hours of me saying that, I lost my job, which for me, as somebody who created this idea that men are providers, the fact that I did not have a job made me realize that I put a lot of stock in working, like as if that was my value, like being able to go to a job was my value. And it took me, God removing that to say, hey, you got more value than that. So I lost the job in 2020. That was that entire year for me. Is when I started to go to therapy because my girlfriend then, now wife, said, hey, you put too much stock in this idea of money and being a provider. You don't necessarily, it was literally keeping me from taking our next step. Um, and me asking her to marry me because I just felt like I couldn't show up as a provider. And ultimately, I had to learn that being a man and being a provider comes in different ways, right? It's not just financial, it's
Right.
emotional, it's
That's right.
spiritual, it's all these different things. But
That's
at
right.
that time, that was all I was. I was just like, it's money. Like you got to be able to show up with money. And so, 2020, I lost the job. 2021, I ended up getting the job back. I was furloughed for an entire year. So for an entire year, I'm not working. Um, I really wish I would have been more intentional about that time. Just to kind of, to Rodney's point, kind of peel the layers back. I feel like I spent so much of it just kind of harping on the fact that I didn't have a job and worried about what that looked like for me as a man, that I don't feel like I used that time wisely. I feel like God was really trying to say, "Hey, let me sit you down, bro. Let me give you some time to focus and grow and peel the layers back." And then, like most people, I used that time. I filled it with something else. Like I started serving more at church, like just all these different things. When I feel like God was really trying to sit me down for that purpose. So, 2020. Um, April 2020, I was furloughed. I ended up getting called back into work April 2021. But then in May 2021, I ended up getting really sick. Literally, my insurance kicked back in at the job. I ended up having to have emergency surgery because um, I had some stones that had traveled outside of my gallbladder, and they had started blocking my liver function and all this. So I ended up having to be in the hospital for days and have emergency surgery. And then after that, I got healed, 6 weeks, had the surgery, got healed 6 weeks. Then I ended up totaling my car. So at this point, y'all,
Oh man. Man.
a guy ended up hitting me. At this point, I now understood what my mama said when she said, "If it ain't one thing, it's another." I just felt like if it ain't one thing, it's another. And so end up totaling the car. And that's when I really had to just say, God, what are you trying to teach me in this moment? Like, I know I'm hard headed, but like, God, what are you really trying to teach me in this moment? And ultimately, I felt like for God, He was really trying to teach me that you can't, that you have to ask for help. You have to allow other people to help
Mm,
you. I
Mm.
done spent
that's
so
good.
much of my life feeling like as a man you don't ask for help, and as a man you get it done. And realistically, there are going to be times where you are at the end of your rope. You can't do everything. And I
Yeah.
think every single one of those moments, God was saying, like, hey, you lose your job, like you need to be able to know that that's just not the only value you have. You need to be able to know, hey, you ain't working right now. Are you going to sit quiet? Are you going to humble yourself and ask your friends, like, yo, I need help. Like your boy needs some little coins. Like I need to eat. Even with the medical situation, just having to depend on my wife just for help. Like I just don't ask for help. Like that's hard for me. And even with the car situation, it was just like I really feel like God was trying to tell me in that moment, like as a man, you're going to have to ask for help. And all of this happened right before I got married. And even now, even being married, she was my girlfriend through all that happening. I still struggle to ask for help, and so I really believe that that is something that, as men, we have to kind of we just gotta know, man. Like, it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to really ask. My wife gets on me all the time because she's like, "You don't let me be a helpmate." She can ask me like, "Hey, babe, you want some from the kitchen?" I'll be like, "No, I'm good." And then 5 minutes later, I go up and get some from the kitchen. She's like, "Bro, I literally asked you. I asked you if you needed something." And so that would be my story, man. That like, when things are just happening, nothing happens by accident. So if things are happening back to back, as a man, you really need to step back and try to get to the root of why are all of these things happening? What's the common thread here? And for me, it was I had to, pride ultimately comes before the fall. I had to humble myself, and in a lot of situations, ask for help, and that's something that I'm still
That's
working
good.
through.
That's
Thank
good.
you again for sharing that, the transparency in that story, man. And like you said, I mean, God has a way of getting our attention. And when we start
Hmm.
thinking that we can just do life on our own without Him, where we're trying to just
Yes,
carry
sir.
all the weight, all the burden, putting on our Superman cape and just making it happen, yeah, it's noble, it's great intentions. That's very nice of
Hmm.
you to do that. But at the end of the day, God is like, I'm in control of this, and you need to
Yep.
recognize
Yeah.
that I run the show and that you can't just do life on your own without me. And so sometimes the best way to get our attention is to just blow up our situation. Let me snatch a
Yep.
job. Let me mess with let's mess with your money. Let me snatch your health a little bit. Let me
Hmm.
snatch your let me snatch your ride. The things that meant something to you, bringing you
Right.
to a point to where you have to say, okay. It's like kind of like back in the day when you twist somebody's arm and make them say uncle, uncle, uncle. It was like, okay,
Uncle,
what you
please.
instead of saying, it's like, okay, what you trying to tell me? All right, you done took everything from me. Now what am I supposed to get out of this? And once he has our attention, then he's like, okay, now that you're listening to me, this is what
Right.
I have for you. And then once we're opening our hearts and our minds and our in our ears to just take in what he has for us, then we now begin to see, okay, I don't have to do this thing by myself. I can ask for
Hmm.
help, and it's not a badge of shame or
Right.
or insufficiency.
Yeah.
It doesn't make me less of a man because I'm going through a challenging time. Storms happen to men, to women, to black,
Yeah.
to white, to old, to young. It doesn't matter. We all gonna go through
Hmm.
something. It's just what are we gonna do when we go through it? Are we gonna wallow
That's
in our
right.
self pity? Are we gonna still keep trying to do it by ourselves? Trying to I'll
Hmm.
figure it out somehow. Well, it's good that God equips us with being able to do certain things, to that we can, navigate on our own. But we have limits. We're humans, and we're supposed to have limits.
Right.
And He's saying, lean on me, lean into me. Let me help you. Let me be the
Yep.
the father to you that I intend to be. And so I love that you shared that and just that revelation of asking for help, because that is a struggle that we as men in our
Hmm.
own way tend to battle with. So I think your
Yeah.
story is very powerful in highlighting that and why we do need to just let go of that pride and just say I need some help and be okay with
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm jumping to you, Roderick. Again, brother, tell us about that time, man. It hits different. This is heavy. Don't know how I'm gonna make it through this. What was that moment like for you, and what did it take for you to have that overcoming breakthrough moment to persevere through that situation?
Okay. So mine were between the year 2015 and 2017. My mother died in 2015. My mother's mother died in 2015. Um, my stepmother's mother died in 2016. My great aunt died in 2016, and my father died in 2017. The hardest 2 years of my life,
Mhm.
the hardest 2 years of my life. And it's by the grace of God that I'm here and I'm not in a psychiatric ward somewhere.
Mhm.
My mother was my greatest cheerleader, was the biggest supporter I ever had. When When you think of mama's boy and you think of moms and their sons, nobody rode harder for her kids than my mother. And to lose that voice and to lose that presence, I
Mm-hmm.
remember I had just started working on the job I have now with Commissioner Brooks, and my mother was diagnosed. She had been diagnosed with breast cancer um, prior to that, right? Prior to me taking this job, she had been diagnosed with breast cancer. She had had it for like 3 or 4 years. And when I took this job a couple of months later, um, she was diagnosed. She was told that the cancer had spread throughout her body and was in her bones. And I'll never forget going to the hospital to see her after I had gotten the word to come to the hospital. I remember walking into the hospital room and looking at my mother and her telling me, "Well, baby, that's it." And there was this look of relief and resolve on her face. She had resolved the fact that she was about to die and
Mm-hmm.
she had given up. She said, you could just hear it in her voice that she wasn't going to fight anymore. She had fought all that she wanted to fight and she was tired. And having to watch my mother wither away and die is probably one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't have time to really grieve my mother because my father, shortly after my mother died, my father was diagnosed with dementia. And so we had to start supporting my father and caregiving for him and stuff like that. And my dad was my world. My dad was my superhero. He was my spiritual father. He was everything to me. I looked up to my dad. Um, and my dad was such a gifted speaker, a charismatic man, and he was a great man of faith. He was a great preacher and a community steward. And to watch somebody who had such a command of the English language began to decline rapidly to where he could no longer read the scriptures that he based his life on, to where he could no longer write anymore. He was a gifted writer. He could no longer write. And then deteriorate to the point to where he couldn't even speak anymore. To watch that decline happen and watch my dad die before my eyes, right on the heels of my mother dying and those other relatives that I talked about, was the most difficult. It was devastating to me, man. And I went into a period of depression. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I didn't want to see anybody. All I would do was just go to work and just kind of push through. And what I realized is I had become an expert at functioning, just pushing it
Mm-hmm.
down and do what you got to do because that's what men are supposed to do, right? We got to show up and do what's expected of us and do what we're supposed to do to make sure that everybody else is taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
I did that. And I did that for as long as I could. And I got to a place to where I couldn't do it anymore. I mean, I literally just kind of broke down. I'll never forget. I was in my car and I was leaving work and I pulled over on the side of the road and I cried like a baby and I could not stop crying. I tried to suck it up, but I just could not stop crying. I drove my car home and I cried all the way home. I got in my bed. I walked past my wife and my children, went to my room, closed the door, and curled up in the bed in a fetal position. And I just cried. And I cried that whole night. And I got up the next day and I didn't even have strength to get out of the bed. I had no motivation to do anything. I had literally hit the wall. I couldn't do anything, man. I had no desire to do anything. I was emotionally fatigued. I was physically exhausted. I just didn't have it in me anymore. I didn't have it in me anymore to do anything. I was just like, I'm done. I'm done. And when I got to that place, I recognized that I had come to the end of myself
Mhm.
and I needed God to bring me out. And I prayed and I asked God, I said, God, you're gonna have to bring me out because I can't do it anymore. I can't help myself. I can't get up and keep functioning anymore. It's just not in me. And my saving grace was getting counseling, getting therapy. I started going to therapy because I said I can't do it anymore. I need somebody to help me because I don't know how to get
Mhm.
myself out of the place I'm at. I don't know how to get myself. I don't know how to fix myself. I don't know how to get up and keep moving. And so I started going to therapy, and that's the thing that saved my life. Going to therapy, having brothers that I could talk to and be vulnerable with and share my struggles with, and brothers that would just sit with me and would just be present. They didn't have to say anything, they were just present, man. And they held me up, they held me down. So, counseling and a small group of just real brothers that loved me, man, and that supported me and that were present. And my wife is what saved my life, man. That's why I'm here today. And God, of course. But God orchestrated all of that. He knew what I needed.
Mhm.
He knew exactly what I needed. And his answer was not what I thought it was, right? It was therapy. And there's such a stigma for men in therapy, especially black men. We don't go to therapy. We don't tell people our business. We don't tell them what's going on with us. If you do, you weak. You a punk. But that was God's answer for me. And it literally saved my life.
Mhm.
Thank you, my brother, for sharing that. Again, the transparency has just been flowing through this podcast today, and again, yet another story of that, and just dealing with grief. Grief is hard,
Yes, sir.
on so many levels, and then, like I said, when it connects with somebody that you talked about your mom. I've been down that road. Losing my mom and the close relationship, and that just rips you apart, and how you just don't care. You're just so in this dark space. So not to say that my experience was your experience, but that pain is a different kind of pain, and just like I said,
And,
the back to back of
and,
it all. Your mom and significant other relatives that clearly were important to you in life, and then dad, and these are people you looked up to, you admired, you respected, and then they're gone. It's like it's almost that it's a feeling of abandonment.
bro,
I used to,
that's it. That's it,
yeah.
man. It's abandonment. It's like I felt like I was an orphan.
I,
I really did.
and you saying that's exactly the way I described when I lost my mom. That was exactly the words that I used. It was like, for the first time, even though I never experienced what it was like to be an orphan, that was the
Yeah,
closest that I could identify with as
yeah,
to what that felt like. You felt like an orphan, like there
yeah,
was
man.
nobody there for you, and it's a lonely, dark space to be. But at the end of the day, but God, you know,
Amen.
Mhm.
knowing that He's there He's the ultimate comforter. The one who can wipe your tears away in ways that
Yes,
nobody
sir.
else can. And then he
Yes, sir.
and as with your case, it was a blessing that he surrounded you with people that again weren't there to try to fix you,
Yeah.
but were there to just be there, the presence.
Say
You
Mhm.
that.
know,
Say that again,
yeah,
man.
they
Say
weren't
that
there to
again.
fix. Because a lot of times people confuse. It's a very common thing, and most people don't mean any harm by it. It's like you lose loved ones. Well, let me know if there's anything that I can do for you. Or well, can you bring them back? Well,
Right.
then don't just say, is there anything that you can do for me? You're there
Mhm.
for me, or
Yeah.
or you want to define how long I should grieve. So if
Come
you've
on, bro.
grieved for 6 months or 9, yeah, it's time for you to get past that. I mean, it's been 6 months, it's been 9 months. I can tell
Mm,
you, and I'm sure my brother will tell you the same thing. I'll never get over.
that's right. Never ever.
I'll never get
Never.
over it ever. It's just
Never
one of
ever.
those things that over time you learn how to better deal with
That's right.
their absence. Over time, what you focus on is not so much about the loss, but about the experiences and the lessons learned
Mhm.
and the love shared. So it's just how you process it differently. But as far as
That's right.
I got over it. It's been long enough. You need to no, that it don't work like that.
No,
That's just not
sir.
how it works. And
It's not.
and so I have a hard time when people try to put those time limits and those restraints on you. But just sometimes the best coming alongside that you can do for somebody is just to be there and be quiet,
That's right.
say nothing.
That's right.
You know, you could be sitting there for an hour and neither of you are saying anything. I could just have my arm around him or on his shoulder. We just we just there,
That's
saying
good.
nothing, just taking it all in, just letting whatever that moment allows, let it happen, whatever that is, you know.
Yeah.
So I totally feel you on that, and again, I appreciate you sharing that, and because there's a lot of men out here who are grieving,
Yeah,
and that's
man.
the other thing about grief too.
Yeah.
Grief doesn't just have to happen because somebody died.
Come on,
You
bro.
know, there's a lot of us men, who are grieving, especially those of us who, let's just say, we grew up in, single parent homes and we didn't have our dads around. We're grieving the absence of the relationship. It's like it
Yeah.
was severed. It was like it's a death to us, even though it not in the
Yeah.
physical, but because that father wasn't there. I remember how I felt when I stood in front of my biological father's casket. There was that sadness that he was gone,
Yeah.
but then there was an anger because it was like, even though I knew that I was a full grown man and well into my years and he's well into your years and there was no way for us to recapture throwing the ball around or nothing like that. It was just the fact that I knew for sure I'm looking that to see that he's no longer moving. He's no longer here. It was like, now I know for certain that this will never happen. And I
Yeah.
was mad about that because I felt like I had missed out on something. I had been cheated out of something.
Yeah.
That as a
Yeah.
son, I shouldn't have been cheated out of that from my dad. Love my
Yeah.
mom to death, but she couldn't do some things that a dad would have been able to do for me as his son.
Yeah,
She couldn't
man.
do that. And so you start reflecting on that kind of stuff and it can mess with you. And if you don't have a means to process that, which is
That's
why
right.
I'm glad that you shared and Dontae shared and Rodney shared about the value of counseling. Because I was one of those brothers who was taboo on the counseling stuff. Therapy is for crazy people and all of that. And it wasn't until I went to the first Candid Conversations event
That's right. That's right.
that I met Danny,
Yes,
who just
sir.
happened to be a counselor, who just happened to accept my insurance. And he and I happened to connect. And boom, there I was counseling for the first time in my life, 50 plus
Yeah,
years
man.
in, you know, something that I probably should have had long before that. And it was one of the best
Right.
decisions I could have ever made,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
and how divinely perfect that was to have a black man be in this role. So somebody who looked like me, who was also rooted in Christ
Yeah.
and able to help me process some stuff that I was dealing with. Because when I came to
Yeah.
that Candid Conversation
Yeah,
session,
man.
I was going through some stuff. I'm still going through some stuff, but it was really heavy at that time. And I
Yeah.
was looking at Candid Conversation as an opportunity to help me. I didn't know what it was going to do, but I was hoping it was going to do something. It was going to connect me with something. So to meet brothers like him, to meet brothers like yourselves, it made a world of difference. And that's why even platforms like this, for us to even be having these conversations, is
So
it's so
important.
healing, so important.
Yes.
You know, and nobody on here is a punk. Nobody on here is soft because we're being vulnerable about our pains and our traumas and our hurts and our
That's right.
frustrations. That doesn't make us weak. If anything, it makes us
Sir.
strong in
That's
the fact
right.
that we were confident enough and bold enough to be able to share it and not be ashamed. We should be able to
Yeah.
have these conversations amongst brothers and it not be you dogging me out, you talking about, oh, look at you being weak. No,
Speak, bro.
this is an opportunity for us to hold each other up, to
That's
pour
right.
into each other, to love on each other, to pray for each other, to support each other. We all just listened to everybody's story. That's what I just got to. We didn't say nothing. We listened.
Yeah.
That made you being able to tell that story comfortable to do because you felt that love and support
That's right.
virtually in the room.
That's right.
you know. So that's good stuff, brothers. I appreciate you pouring out like that. So with that said, if what you just did again is remarkable in sharing and pouring out. And I'm gonna kind of throw this out to to all three of you. I don't care who answers on this one. Just curious to know, what do you think are some of the main things that's preventing, particularly preventing men from opening up? What do you think are the main factors that causes men to not want to do what we just did? What's stopping us from doing it? And if you had to offer some words of advice as to, even if it's just a first step into getting out of the guarded mode and holding it all in and not sharing, to finally just letting that stuff out, what would you say is the way to do that? So let's start off with the first part, and again, anybody can chime in on that. What's stopping men from opening up? What is the main cause, main causes that you feel is preventing us from doing that more, like doing more of what we're doing right now?
For me, I don't think men feel like they have permission to be vulnerable or to
Mhm.
be honest about their feelings because our culture and society portrays men as supposing to be closed off, hard, provider. Nobody's supposed to ever see you struggle or hurt. And those messages are communicated to us at an early age. It's what they call toxic masculinity. When a young boy hurts his knee on the basketball court or on the playground, the older boys or the men say, "Man, shake that off. Don't you be no punk. Don't be
Mhm.
no wimp. Don't you cry. Man, Rub, get up and keep on playing." And that message begins to inform how we operate and how we move and how we
Mhm.
function. And so we don't feel like we have permission to be vulnerable. We don't feel like we have permission to share our emotions and how we feel and to be honest. And then when we get married, we're taught in the church and in other places in culture that men are supposed to be strong. You're the provider of the house. You're supposed to take care of the family. You're supposed to be strong for everybody. Be strong, be strong, be strong. Those are the messages that we keep hearing over and over and over again. And if you tell somebody something for so long, they begin to believe it and buy into it, and that begins to be their identity, and that's their value
Mhm.
system. And we've got to shift that narrative and change that message and teach brothers how to be vulnerable, how to be honest, how to share how they feel, how to express how they feel. Because we've been taught for so long to bottle up our feelings and not share them, we don't know how to do it. And we haven't been given permission. And so the word that I would share with brothers today is I give you permission to just be real,
Mhm.
to be broken, to be hurt, to be human, to feel. I give you permission to cut the switch back on to feel. Unburden yourself, brothers.
Yep.
You were never created to carry all of the weight that you're carrying. That's why we're dying at such an alarming rate at early ages because we're carrying stuff we were never created to carry.
Mm,
Mhm.
Unburden yourself. Be free from this image that you got to have it all together and you got to be Superman. You can be the one that needs to be rescued. It's all right.
love
Mhm.
Be
that.
free to be vulnerable.
I
That's what
love.
I got.
I love that.
That's good.
So
That's good.
Rodney, Roderick. I mean, I'm sorry, Rodney, Dante. Man, I want to cry. I want to get this out. I've been holding this in. What do I do? How do I get it out? What would you say to that? How do I got all this stuff in me, and I don't have nobody. I can't talk to my spouse. I can't talk to my kids. I don't have boys in my life. That I can pick up the phone. Where do I go with this? What's your thoughts on it?
You have to find, you have to find counseling. You
Mhm.
have to find a person that 100% has no bias, no dog in that fight, as my father used to say, that has no way, shape, or form is trying to take you one way or the other. To just listen. 9 times out of 10, a counseling session is just listening and letting it get it out. It's not always you need to do this. Here's a laundry list of things you need to do. Sometimes you just need to get it out. You've got to find somebody that you can just get it out and be 100% vulnerable and say, "I'm broken."
Yeah.
Um, I know us Gen Xers on the line here or in the audience. us Gen Xers were told you can't be vulnerable. You have to be strong. And like I said, I grew up an athlete, so everything was rub some dirt on and get back out there. Are you
Yep,
hurt or are you injured? There's a huge difference.
that's right.
What we don't understand is trauma is injuring us, not just hurting us, but it's injuring us. And you may not even know what trauma you're dealing with. I did not know that I was dealing with the children of alcoholism trauma until I was mid 50s. I did not even know that that was a situation. I did not even know that what I was going through was normal and just somebody just needed to point me in the right direction and tell me what to do to fix myself. But I had to talk it out so a person could figure it out. Now I'm a huge advocate of counseling and therapy, so I may not be the best person to ask. I may not be, but if you have a job and your job offers you benefits, most of them have an EPA, and
That's
that
right.
Mhm.
EPA typically will allow you to get some counseling for free, at least one or two sessions.
Yeah.
And
That's
even if
right.
your
Yeah, you're
money's
talking about
real
the
tight,
the EAP
EAP.
sessions. Yeah,
Yeah,
EA, yeah,
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 hmm
EAP, EPA. I mean, there's different variations of that.
yeah.
Essentially, the freebies that they throw along the side
The
of
free
your
counseling.
Yeah.
benefit. Yeah,
Yeah.
free
absolutely.
counseling. EAP, EPA. I'm sorry, did I say EPA? I meant EAP. My apologies. But anyway,
You're good.
regardless, there's always somebody that even in a tight situation that you can find to help you out. To if it's important, you'll come up with the funds. You know what I mean? If it's important, you'll come up with, a few dollars here and a few dollars there. Maybe it's I don't get to go, I don't get to hang out with the boys on a Friday night, but I'm getting my mental health taken care of. I don't get that, the brand new rims on my car, but I'm getting my mental health taken care of. Because all that material stuff means zero if you're not good with self. I mean,
Yeah,
Mhm.
people wrap themselves in materialism, and it's just because they're not good with the self. They're trying to hide who they truly are. And
that's
again, it
right.
goes back to the yin and the yang. And I'm not going to get real deep into this, but my father was very materialistic. My mother was very spiritual, religious. So, I mean, there was that constant pull in our household of, well, what family needs five cars and two people are driving? I mean, who needs all of that? But there again, that's what my father thought was important. Right, wrong, or indifferent. That's what he was you know told throughout his life it was important and try to pass on to me.
Mhm.
So I mean, you just have to find somebody. There there again, there's always some way to get it done. I hate to go back to a trite cliche, but if there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah.
hmm
Yeah,
Yeah.
So good, and that's good stuff, man. Definitely, definitely. So Dante, real quick, if I'm a brother that's listening to this, and I'm receiving all of the stuff that we're saying, I'm loving it, I'm embracing it, I'm in agreement, but I just don't have that brother in my life. In my crew of people that I know, people I call friends, people I call buddies or whatever. Where would you say that I should look? I'm gonna break it up in two parts. Either where should I look to find a brother who I can perhaps connect with on that level, for moments like this, or if you can even answer it from the standpoint of what characteristics should I be looking for in another brother that will signal to me this might be that brother that perhaps I need to build some type of rapport with, so as I'm dealing with stuff, I got somebody who's like me that I can open up to and perhaps have a healthy interaction like what we're having right now. How do I meet brothers like us if I don't know you and you're not currently in my life? Where do I find
Right.
you? How do I meet you?
Right.
yeah,
Right. So the first thing I do want to say is I want to say, in addition to counseling, first and foremost, try literally try your community. I think for a
yes,
lot of times we say that we don't have people around us who care. And I don't think that that's true. Every single time that
that's
I
right.
have let my brothers know where I am, whether these are day ones or just men that I've met in college or just at work, I've never been met with judgmental stares,
Come on, bro.
or like it's always been received well. And
That's good.
one, I think a lot of times we tell ourselves like, I don't want to let people into this area of my life because I don't want to be judged. But I've come to realize, bro, the older I've gotten, I'm in my early 30s. Everybody's struggling with something. They may
Come
not
on,
be
man.
struggling with the thing you struggling with, but everybody is struggling with something. And
That's
because
right.
of that, we all on the same page.
Yes.
we are.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
We all on the same page. We all are humans trying to figure this experience out. And so every single time that I have vocally told my brothers and my friends, hey, I'm struggling in this, they have always walked alongside of me. They've always shocked me. They've always shocked me. And so I would say, one, try out your community. Two, there are all of these organizations. I think we are in a beautiful time right now where we've always seen these spaces have always been there for women, but now we're seeing an uptake in these spaces for men
Yes.
as well.
Yes.
We work with and you've attended, Joe, Candid Conversations. This is a safe space for men, but
That's
we are
right.
not the only ones out here doing this work. I know
That's
several
right.
other organizations, whether they were started on a governmental stage, like the city of Forney, Texas, has a men's group where they get together and essentially do the exact same thing. And so I will say, man, get
It's
on
beautiful.
Google. We get on Google for everything else. We get on
Come on.
Google talking about how can we barbecue this and come up with all the. Get on Google and say, I'm looking for a men's group, a safe space men's group. And I promise you, there will be things that come up. There are so
That's
many of them
good.
that happen virtually. There are some that happen in person. But also, I would just challenge you. A lot of times we wait for other men to be vulnerable. We wait for other men to be vulnerable as a okay, now I can be vulnerable. When you may have to be the person that
That's
extends
right.
that olive
Mm-hmm.
branch first. You may
That's
have
right.
to say, "Hey, I'm struggling in this," to give somebody else the opportunity to come in and vocalize their struggles, and now you can walk and do life together. And so, I would say, try out your community. Next, Google men's spaces, men's safe spaces, men's organizations, that you can go and be a part of. They have them at churches, they have them at communities, like they exist. We are not in the time where they no longer exist. And when you go to these places, you may have to be the first person to be vulnerable because when brothers can relate to you, that gives way for vulnerability, right? So if
That's
I
it.
can say,
Mm.
if I can see,
That's it.
hey, I'm struggling in this, and now another brother, that makes him feel comfortable to say, hey, I'm struggling with that, or I'm not struggling in that. I'm struggling in this. Now we can walk together and do life together. But you may have to extend that olive branch first.
Dante, that's good stuff. And I ascribe to the philosophy or the opinion on courage that Dr. Brene Brown gave. Her definition of courage is the ability to be vulnerable when you cannot control the outcome or people's response.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
And that's it. We got to be willing to be vulnerable, and that takes courage. We got to be the one. We got to be willing to be the first one to do it, because that's
Yep.
what it may take. That's good stuff, brother.
Yep.
I love that. I love that. You both hit it on the nail, and you basically what you did is you blew up any reason for a brother listening to this, wanting to come up with excuses as to why I can't meet that person or why I can't connect with that group.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, it's just something as simple as Googling it. It's
Mm-hmm.
again, it's just something as simple as quit waiting on somebody else to be the initiator of the conversation. You just
Right.
say something
Yeah,
and quit tripping
Right.
on what other people think. Just put it out there. If they
that's
laugh, if
right.
they snicker or whatever, okay. But that's not going to necessarily be everybody in the room that does that. There's going to be
That's
somebody
right.
that because you were bold enough to say something, then that gives them, as Roderick said earlier, it gives me permission to say something.
Mm-hmm.
It gives me the courage to say something, and now you create a snowball
Yep.
effect.
Yeah,
That's what I've been experiencing just even since doing the podcast. It's like most of my people who come on have never done anything like this. They've never shared their stories and their personal journeys. But when they see other people do it, it creates a snowball effect. And then all of a sudden now, well, I'd like to come on. I'd like to try and say, I got something to say. You
yeah,
know?
man. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, come on. Let's come on and say it, and then it blesses everybody. And it's a healing
Right.
opportunity. So that's good stuff, brother. That is good stuff. So if you had an opportunity in a few words to talk to the younger versions of yourself, or just to the men who may be tuning in to this, and they just need an encouraging word on how to, again, take that first step. And I know we've talked a little bit about some of this already, but what would be that message that that to the point, straight, no chaser, to the point message that you would give to a brother in encouraging him and inspiring him and uplifting him to operate on that spirit of courage, to just step up and for his betterment, for his mental health, for his overall well-being, to just take action, to just to enhance his overall mental health state, to stop holding it all in. What would that be for you? I'm gonna start with you, Rodney. What would be that to the point, boom, here's my message to you, to get started, to get on that road to loving yourself enough to embrace the importance of mental health?
So I'm gonna say two things, and I'm gonna keep it real short. Number one, be willing to be vulnerable. Number two, in the immortal words of Michael Jackson, you are not alone.
Come on.
There you go. There you go. Love that. Love that. That's a good, straight, no chaser, powerful statement right there. Love it. Love it. What about you, Dante? Same question. What would be that straight, no
Uh,
chaser message? This what you do.
Rodney took mine, man.
Okay.
So I'm
He
gonna
took
go.
mine
I'm
too.
gonna go.
You, you,
I'm gonna
you,
go a
you was
different
tapping
route.
into
I'm
your
gonna
inner
go.
Michael Jackson and he took it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Hey, literally, I'm like,
What?
dang, that's gonna be mine. But if I could tell my younger self anything, I think it would be just that you are qualified. I think I spent a lot of my life feeling like I wasn't, man enough, or I couldn't show up in these spaces as a husband or as a father because I didn't necessarily see it modeled. And that is something that I'm now trying to undo. So I'll just say you're qualified, man, and you are qualified to show up in those spaces as a leader, at your job as a leader, just in life as a husband, as a father. You are qualified for any room that you walk into. Like, don't go into it feeling like you're not enough. If God puts you there, you are there for a reason. And so, yeah, that's what I'm gonna say. Three words: you are qualified.
I love that. Love that. Same question for you, Roderick. What's the message? What's the straight, no chaser message to the brothers to let them know, hey, this is what you need to do. This is how you can do it.
Three words. You are enough.
That's good.
Just the way you are. You are enough.
Love that. Love that. You are enough. You are qualified. You are not alone. Three straight, no chaser messages, but packed with power.
Yeah.
Embrace that. Embrace that. We're embracing it even as we talk about it. But if you're listening in on this, brothers, embrace that and own it
Hmm.
and believe it. It's so important. So important. So before I let you brothers go, and this has been a wonderful time spending with you. I mean, we could talk for hours on this type of topic, and I'm just put it out there now. We definitely have to have a follow up on this because there's just so much more to unpack. But for the sake of this time, again, thank you for being on the show. But before we go, I do want to take an opportunity to celebrate, to affirm, to acknowledge, to love on you, brothers, on anything that you got going on, upcoming events, current happenings, good news, anything of the like that you'd like to share that we can just, again, just pour into you on and just, celebrate you. So I'm going to jump to you, Rodney. What's going on? Anything that you can share with us, man, that we can just celebrate with you just right now on?
Yeah, so a couple of things I'm working on right now. Obviously, growing my business, but secondly, I've had the great pleasure of being asked to be on the American Cancer Society Real Men Wear Pink campaign. So if we're linked in any way, shape, or form through LinkedIn or Facebook, you're going to see something come across about sponsorship. So just, if you're interested in something you might be interested in looking into as far as helping out the cause, be looking for that. Number two, I'm working on something, and this is probably something you and I are going to have to talk about offline, Joe, and we'll follow up later. But I'm working with on a concept for a not-for-profit that it really bugs me, and it's bugged me for years. And we may have had this conversation many years ago, but it's always been in the back of my brain, so I think it's time to just move forward with it. But I think the education system is completely broken. So, yeah. We asking 18, 19-year-old kids to figure out what they want to do with the next 50 years of their lives. They have no clue, no
Mhm.
basis of knowledge on how to make a decision like that. So,
Mm,
That's good.
and
absolutely.
so, but we'll talk about that offline. But if I may, and I'd like to just wrap up my portion, I'm gonna make a real quick story. I have a stepson who is that's thing is Joe. He's 6'2", 245, wears a size 16 shoe. Big kid.
Big
When I
boy.
first met, yeah, when I first met my girl, he was very much anxiety filled. He was short on confidence. He wouldn't even look anybody in the face. Thought everybody was a serial killer. I mean, he just was really, really in a bad spot. Um, in working with him, and I got to toot my horn a little bit in the last 3 years. In working with him, I've gotten involved in football and other sports. Now the kid has just come completely out of his shell. He's doing big things. He started football last year, really the first time he really played organized football as a freshman. Obviously, you're not very good when you first start something, but as a sophomore, he's starting JV. He's dressing varsity. I've seen just leaps and bounds, not only in his play on the field, but his confidence, off the field and his wanting to do better. His grades have gotten considerably better. So I'm very proud of him as somebody who a young person at 15 that says, I just want to be better. I just want to do better. I've lived my life so sheltered for so many years. I want to turn that around and be different. So, and now
Mhm.
he's almost to the point where sometimes you got to knock him down a little bit, and say, okay, now you're getting a bit
You're right.
strong. So obviously you're grown now. So
Yeah,
you,
yeah.
you're grown now. So you can start paying rent like everybody else. But anyway, I just want to include those two things in there, or three actually. And I apologize, I made three, but yeah. We definitely have to have a conversation, a follow up, because I would like to run my idea past some like minded brothers like yourself to see what you guys think about it.
Absolutely, absolutely, and
Sure.
thank you for
For
sharing
sure.
that, my brother. And congrats on the your partnering with the American Cancer Society,
Hmm.
and just celebrating you as just as a man
Yep.
stepping into a life of a young man,
Yes. Hmm.
taking him out of his shell, being a role model for him, inspiring and encouraging him. We don't want to take that lightly.
Yep.
Every man is
Yep.
not built to do that,
Hey,
in the way that you have been uniquely built to do it. We all have our own ways, but God paired the two of you up for a reason. And you've been
Yep.
clearly pouring into this young man and giving him the
yes,
confidence and the belief that he needs to have, that anything is possible. That, as we talked about earlier, he's qualified. That
Yep.
and you're reminding him that he's not alone, by being there with him and for him and pouring into them. So we celebrate that. We acknowledge that, and we love you
yes,
for that. And that's just a great thing. And I'm excited to hear more about the vision that God has placed on your heart about this nonprofit and addressing the plagues of education. Because you're exactly right. A lot of holes to fill, and but if God has put it on your heart to help plug a few in, then by all means, I totally agree. You should jump all in on that, and make it happen. So we'll definitely talk some more about that. So thank you for sharing that. Dante, what you got going on, brother, that we can love on you and celebrate you for, man?
Man, so we talked about it earlier. What are these spaces, these safe spaces for men? And one of the ones that I'm attached to and Brother Miles is attached to is Candid Conversations for Men. If you want to know more
yes, sir.
information, you can visit www.candidconversationsformen.com. We're currently on tour. We're headed to Fort Lauderdale and then in the month of September, and then we're headed to Atlanta in the month of October. I encourage any man to please come through. Ladies, if you're watching this and you know a man in any of those cities, Fort Lauderdale or in Atlanta, Georgia, please send him there. I promise you, it is life changing when you get around a group of men who have
Facts.
committed themselves to being better. I believe that the world gets better when men get better. And so as
Yes,
we start
sir.
to heal and peel away these layers of the onion, I truly believe that we can see a shift in our communities and a shift in the world. So Candid Conversations for Men, please lock into that. If you want to know more information, you can reach out to me directly. Dontae Robison, Dontae, last name Robinson, Robison. You can follow me find me on all platforms, and I promise you, we can discuss more about it.
Great stuff. Great stuff. And again, celebrating you, my brother, for your commitment and work to Candid Conversations, and just to the cause in general about pouring into men and young men in particular, and just, again, building them up and encouraging them. uh, allowing yourself to create that safe space and just letting them know how to get connected if they're unclear about how to tap into the resources that are out here, so that they don't put up these barriers of in front of them, when in fact they need to be embracing all of the support and help that is out there, because we're trying to break that cycle of not asking for
Yep.
help, so I
Yep.
appreciate you making it clear path, making it as easy as it possibly can be to get the help. If you truly want it, it's out there
Yep.
for you. And last but not least, my brother Roderick, if you would, I know you got some big news as recently as a few hours
Ah.
ago, so we're not gonna let that
Ah.
ride. So you tell us about that and anything else that you'd like to share.
Yes, sir. Thank you again for the opportunity to be on with you, brothers. I have enjoyed every minute of it. My news is I have decided to offer myself up for public service, so I officially launched my campaign for Tarrant County Commissioner of Precinct 1. Um, I would love to have your support. I'd love to have your prayers. I'd love to have whatever support you want to provide, whether that be volunteering or financial support. You can find me at Miles, Miles, the number four, Tarrant, milesfortarrant.org. Miles, the number four, Tarrant, TARRANT.org. You can follow me on all social platforms. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all of the social platforms. Just look for Miles for Tarrant. And I look forward to representing all of the residents of Tarrant County, especially those in Precinct 1. Come out and support. We're having our kickoff event on September the 16th at 11 a.m. in Fort Worth, Texas, at St. Andrew's United Methodist Church, the church where I got my foundation, where my roots were established. The address is 522 Missouri Avenue, Fort Worth, Texas, 76104. Again, that's September the 16th at 11 a.m. Campaign kickoff, the official announcement, September 16th, 11 a.m. at St. Andrew's United Methodist Church. Feel free to connect with me on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter at Roderick Miles Jr. I want to be there to support you, brothers, and help in any way that I can. Thanks again, guys.
Awesome, awesome, and again, congratulations to you, the great works that you're doing, man, and of
Mm-hmm.
course, you got our prayers for a successful run. You've been doing this thing for a while anyway, so it's just a natural
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
progression for
sir.
you to level up to what you're doing now, and just
Yes,
allowing
sir.
God to use you in a mighty way to pour out to the community and touch lives and change lives and making a
Yes,
difference,
sir.
man.
Thank you,
Yep.
So
brother.
absolutely, absolutely. So again, it goes without saying that it has been a privilege, an honor, a pleasure to have you three brothers on tonight. I echo, thoroughly have enjoyed the conversation. It will be a conversation we'll have again at another time to build upon even further, because there's so much more to unpack, so much more to explore. But most importantly, for all the men that are watching, or for the women who have men, special men in their lives, please, please have them tune into this. This is just one of
Mm-hmm.
those podcast episodes that men need to be the dominant faces in the crowd, whether they want to watch
Yep.
the video or they want to listen to it in their respective headphones or whatever. Get this message, because we're hurting out here. Your men are hurting out
Mm-hmm.
here,
Yeah.
and much of that hurt is because they don't have that outlet. They don't have a place, a safe space to pour out into, to unpack. And what we're trying to do is reinforce that idea that we got to support each other as men, and
Mm-hmm.
ladies. You want to allow your men in your life, spouses, brothers, sons, allow them that comfort and space to be able to release, because men hurt too. They go
Yes.
Yes.
through, and they oftentimes walk around with the mask of everything is all right. I'm tough. I'm strong. I got it under control. But they're crying inside. They're hurting inside, and it's affecting their mental health, their physical health, their emotional health, their spiritual health. You're wondering why they're not as connected to the home like they should. They're not being the husbands or the fathers that they should be. A lot, not to make excuses for anything, but a lot of it is just some undealt with stuff,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
and so please, please allow them that space to be able to pour out. Brothers, please support one another. Quit being so quick to say that you're a punk or you're soft, because you're hurting. We all have our hurts and pains. So let's support each other. Let's lift up one another. If it's nothing more than just being with that brother in silence and just being present in the
Yes.
room, allowing that brother to cry, allowing that brother to vent, whatever it takes, to be there and to love on that brother and be in support of him. So this has been a wonderful, awesome time. And for my listeners, if you've enjoyed what you've heard today, please subscribe, please like, please share, please comment. Here at the Blessings in the Street podcast, this is what it's all about: empowering, uplifting, inspiring, encouraging. And we pray that we've done exactly that. I know I've been blessed. I'm sure my brothers on the panel today have been blessed. And
Yes,
I know
sir.
and I know that the messaging that's been put out today is going to be a blessing to anybody that's tuning in to listen. So with that said, here at the Blessings in the Street podcast, this is a place where your story is your glory, where your relationships are relevant, and where your journey is your joy. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts, and I thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, keep fighting that good fight. Stay strong. Remember that you matter. You are important. You have permission to feel pain. You have permission to hurt. You have permission to let it all out. You have permission to receive the comforting and the love and the support of your fellow brothers. Take advantage of that. Your mental health matters. Embrace it. Be proactive in it. And do what is necessary to be the best versions of yourselves that you can be. Take care of yourselves. God bless.